Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back. Jazakallah khair, everybody, for being here on a Wednesday evening instead of doing something else. May Allah put barakah in our effort. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So welcome to another session of Prime Time. My name is Saima Shah, and I am your host. On behalf of MCNA, which is Muslim Children of North America, and YMJ, Young Muslim Junior, and we are under ICNA, which is Islamic Circle of North America. So every month we bring you a new hot topic and a new speaker, and our goal is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give our youth knowledge and leadership skills to be successful in this world and the next. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqeen. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. So in Surah Fatiha, we recite so many times a day in our salah, and we ask Allah to show us the straight path. And alhamdulillah, Allah shows us the straight path in many different ways, and we help all of you to walk on that straight path through this hot topic that we bring to you every month, and our speaker makes it available to you and helps you understand. So today, inshallah, we will be doing technology overdose, and inshallah our speaker, Brother Faizan Mumtaz, will help us understand, as the flyer said, all the good things about it, all the bad things about it, and how can technology, by overusing it, what happens, and then how we can use technology to become a better Muslim. So Brother Faizan Mumtaz has been speaking on our MCNA forum many times before, Jazakallah khair, and he is an active worker as a mentor for the youth in the Muslim community from the age of 13, mashallah, through the YM Muslim. And then he has served various leadership positions at the local and national level and as part of the YM. And then he studied, mashallah, Arabic at Al-Fajr Institute in Cairo, Egypt. He's also served as the Arabic and Islamic Studies teacher at Rockford Iqra, and then Iqra School, where he taught grades 4 through 12, along with teaching for Islamic Learning Foundation, which is the ILF. He also taught Arabic at Bayana Institute in Dallas, Texas. He right now teaches Quranic Arabic programs throughout the Chicagoland, and he works, mashallah, as an IT project manager. And mashallah, he is a dad of a 2.5-year-old, and he lives in Bolingbrook, Illinois. So again, Jazakallah khair, Brother Faizan. We're always so grateful to you that you give us your time. So the mic is all yours now. Jazakallah khair.
Wa iyaakum. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure for me to come and speak with all these young people that are listening here, and I'm sure there's quite a few parents here as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن دعا بدعوته إلى يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking Him to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As Sister Saima already mentioned, our topic is technology overdose. This is obviously a very important topic for everybody concerned, both parents and children, because technology is something that surrounds almost every part of our life, and it's only growing more and more. Technology was an important part for people in the past, but it wasn't as easily or always accessible as it is today. And today, we interact with technology more and more, which is why we need to prepare ourselves and understand how technology can influence and affect us, both positively and negatively. We need to be responsible and we need to be smart about how we interact with technology so that we get the maximum benefit and we don't get any of the harm by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what I want to begin with is talking about a really important concept before I start talking about some of the points of technology. One of the really important concepts in Islam is who you surround yourself with. And a lot of times when the Prophet ﷺ talked about who you accompany yourself with, who you surround yourself with, he was talking about people. What's happening now more and more is because we interact so much with technology, one of the things that we have to be really careful about is how we surround ourselves with technology. And in a minute, I'm going to start describing what I mean by technology. But as a concept, I'm talking about everything that we interact with in terms of TV, internet, computers, tablets, phones, smartwatches now. These are kind of the consumer technology that we think about a lot of times. But there's a lot more technology just aside from just that. So we need to make sure that we're interacting with technology in a really proactive manner, and that we know why we're interacting with this technology, what we're trying to get out of it, so that we get everything out of it that we want. So we need to go about it with the right intention, and we need to make sure that we're doing the right action. So I want to start off by asking this question, and it's kind of a loaded question. Is technology good or evil? And I hear this question asked a lot of times, sometimes by kids, sometimes by parents. Not just to me, but people always ask this question. Is technology good? Is it bad? Is it something we should involve ourselves in? Should we interact with it? And it's kind of a loaded question because I'm only giving you these two choices. Is it good or is it evil? But a lot of times questions that are asked like this require more in-depth answers. We can't just answer with just it's good or it's bad. So sometimes people say, no, technology is really good because we use it for so many different purposes. And I wrote some examples here on the slide. People use technology advancements in medical technology to save someone's life, right? When you go to the hospital or you go to the doctors, you see so much different technology that they have there, things you've never seen before, and all of these things are there to help treat people, to help save their life, to help them understand if they're healthy or if they're unhealthy, what they can do to make their lives better. You might have seen your parents, if they do like blood sugar tests, maybe they do a test on their finger, take some blood, and they find out how much sugar is in their body or in their blood, and that tells them, whether they have too much or they have too little or whatever the case may be. So they're using technology to make their life better. So of course it's a good thing from that perspective. You probably use technology when you're doing your homework, for example. You might use a dictionary to look something up. We're obviously using technology right now to talk about this important topic. There's people from all over the world, all over the country listening to this. Close to 100 attendees just on this GoToWebinar, which means that we're connecting through technology for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is obviously a really good thing. There's technology that's used in farming equipment that lets us grow food. Maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago, they didn't have the technology that we have today where they can grow as much food as possible as we're growing today, which is obviously a really good thing because there's still people in the world that are struggling with hunger and they don't have enough food. But then other people, they say, no, technology is really bad because of all the bad things that come with technology. And so I put some examples over here. People say, well, what about weapons and guns and people get hurt? That's a form of technology as well. TV shows that use bad words or they show bad things or have too much violence in them, that's a bad thing as well. So obviously there's pros and cons to technology, and technology can be used for something good and it can be used for something bad. And it's not fair to ask, is technology good or is it evil? Because you can't answer that question in one shot. You can't just say all of technology is good, and obviously you can't just say all of technology is evil, right? That doesn't make any sense. Because technology is a tool. And just like any tool, it's good when you're using it for a good intention, and it's bad when you're using it for a bad intention, right? So for example, if you have a GPS, you maybe saw your parents use GPS before. If they're trying to get from one place to another place, it gives them directions. So is a GPS system, is it something that's bad or is it something that's good? Well, it's good if you're getting directions to go somewhere good, and it's bad if you're using it to go somewhere bad. But it doesn't mean the GPS is bad. It means it's bad for you because you're using it in a bad way. So just like any tool, it can be used in the right hands or it can be used in the wrong hands. So another example I have over here is a police officer. Right? He needs a gun, which is a form of technology, in order to protect people. But somebody can also use that same form of technology, like a criminal, he can use it for bad things. So it can be good and it can be bad. And then one of the reasons this topic is so important is because sometimes there's a lot of things in the middle there where you're not sure if it's actually good or is it bad. Like sometimes you could play a video game. You could play a video game that doesn't have any bad language in it, doesn't have any bad pictures in it, it doesn't have really any violence in it. Like maybe like something on your phone or something like that, or on your tablet or something like that. And it's like really simple and it's really innocent. Well, is that something that's good or is it something that's bad? Because it is permissible, right? Because there's nothing bad inside of it. But are you using it in a productive way to kind of relax, or are you using it to waste your time, or are you using it to avoid doing your homework? So we have to kind of ask more questions to understand whether this is something good or something bad. And this is where you have to become really smart and really responsible, because this is your life we're talking about. And not your parents or your friends or your older brothers and sisters. They're not going to be able to look out for you every minute of your life. You have to be responsible, and you have to ask these questions for yourself and say, well, the way I'm using this technology, is this something good? Is this something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be pleased with in the way that I'm using it? Or is this something bad? Is this something that's wasting my time and that's not giving me any benefit at all? You need to ask these questions while you're engaging in technology so that you understand whether it's something good or it's something bad. Because ultimately, the only person who can really answer that question is the person who's using it. Because they know why they're using it and they know how they're using that technology. So you have to ask yourself, and you have to answer for yourself, is this something good or is this something bad? And that same technology sometimes can be used for good and sometimes it can be used for bad. So really the golden rule when it comes to technology is that it is a tool, and it can be used for good and it can be used for bad, right? People don't ask, like people ask, okay, is TV good or is TV bad? But people don't ask, is a microwave good or a microwave bad? Even though microwave is a form of technology as well. Is a car good or is a car bad? People don't ask these questions because they generally use those things for good purposes, right? You don't use a microwave really for bad things, right? So people don't ask, is a microwave good or is a microwave bad? But these other forms of technology, like your phone, your tablet, internet, social media, texting, WhatsApp, Facebook, these things can be used for good and they can be used for bad. And they are used for good, and sometimes they are used for bad. So we need to make sure that we really prepare ourselves and understand every aspect of how we use it so that we understand how we're interacting with it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us many places in the Quran about how He created things in this earth for us to use but not abuse. That's kind of the golden rule here, is that these are things for us to use to benefit ourselves, to benefit our iman, to help us with our goals of the dunya and the akhirah. But they're not there for us to abuse. And by abuse, I mean use them for bad purposes, or use them to waste your time, or use them in a way that brings zero benefit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about food, when He talks about the mountains, when He talks about animals, when He talks about all these different things that He created in this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ, that these are provisions. These are things that you should use but not abuse. They're created for you and they're created for your animals, your cattle. So for example, in Surah Abasa, which many of you probably know that surah, you've heard that surah, you might have even memorized that surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us to look at our food. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَى طَعَامِهِ. Look at your food. Right? Is food good or is food bad? Well, it depends how you use it. Do you use it in a way to sustain yourself so that you become a better believer and you use that energy that you're getting to worship and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or are you using it in a way that's not productive? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look at it. Look at the food that's in front of you. Look at the food that's around you. أَنَّا صَبَبْنَا الْمَاءَ صَبًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He caused the water to come down, pouring down so that that food can grow. The food that you have in front of you, ultimately it came because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed water to come down from the sky. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops the water from coming down to the ground, the animals are not going to survive. Plants are not going to survive. We're not going to have nourishment for ourselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, look at this thing that's in front of you, that it's this innocent looking thing, just food, right? There's nothing really special about it. But if you look at it and you reflect, you'll see that it is special. And it can be used, even just thinking about the food that you have, and understanding that's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He uses this phrase, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. So the word mata' means that you use it, but you don't abuse it. And that's how technology should be approached. It's one example that one scholar gave that I liked a lot is that think of technology like a comb. A comb is something that you use, right? Everybody knows what a comb is, right? You comb your hair, your parents comb your hair. But it's not something that you obsess over, right? You don't use it. A comb is a tool, and you use it for its purpose. You use it to comb your hair so that your hair looks straight, or whatever reason you're using it. But you don't abuse a comb, right? You don't use a comb to hurt people, for example, right? That's the wrong way to use a comb, right? You're abusing it. You're not using it. Similarly, a comb, you don't get distracted with a comb. One of the problems that we have to technology is that we're challenged with using it versus abusing it, but sometimes we get distracted with it. We start wasting our time with it. But nobody takes a comb and sits down and plays with the comb for 4 or 5 hours, right? Nobody does that, right? Because we understand the comb is just a tool. It's not something you're supposed to get distracted with and obsess over, and you get really upset with your parents if you can't use a comb, right? You don't do that because it's a comb, right? It's not something meaningful to you. Similarly, that's how we approach technology, and that it has extreme benefit in it, but it should be used in that limited sense that we get benefit from it. And the moment that we get lost in it and we get distracted and we get obsessed over it, or we get so attached to it that, or we get upset at our parents when they don't let us use it, then that's a problem. So think of technology, think of internet, think of a tablet, think of all these things like a comb. They're just a tool that we want to use for benefit. So let me go to the next slide. So that's kind of the golden rule, is that use technology as a tool, use it, but don't abuse it, and understand that it's just a tool to achieve your ultimate purpose in life. And that purpose, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I haven't created the jinn or the human beings except so that they worship me. And that's our purpose in life, right? Everybody should know what their purpose in life is. It is to worship and it is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's our purpose in life. So when we're using these different forms of technology, we should understand them in that context. We should understand them that, are they helping us achieve that purpose? And if they're not, we have to ask ourselves, well, why are we spending so much time and why are we so obsessed using these different things? So I want to ask you guys some questions, and I want to come up with some examples of, first, what are some examples of technology that's good when we use it for a good reason, and what are some examples of technology that are bad when we use them for a bad reason? So I gave you guys some examples before. Let's come up with some more examples that you have in real life that you might interact with. And you can put them in the questions box, and I'll read them out. So somebody put computers for helping people, right? Yeah, you can use computers to learn things, to teach things, or you can use computers to waste your time and do other things as well, bad things. So somebody wrote, for example, when you do your homework, you can use the Quran, you can use the computer to read the Quran, to look up ayahs, look up the meaning of something. Somebody put ice cream maker. That's definitely a form of technology, right? And you can use it for good, and you can also use it for bad, right? If you eat too much ice cream or something like that. On a tablet. Tablet's good or tablet's bad? Well, somebody says you can have a Quran app where you can read the Quran from your tablet. That's an example where you can use it for something good. Or you can talk to your family that's overseas on Skype or something like that. And one of the things the Prophet ﷺ encouraged was silatul rahim, was keeping close ties with your family. And so you can do that using Skype and things like that. Somebody put good, the machines in the hospital, and bad, if you use social media to talk to people you're not supposed to talk to. These are all really good. Google, somebody said to search up something good or to search up something bad, right? It can be used for good and for bad, right? YouTube, somebody put good and bad. You can use it to look up good things, and you can listen to speeches. There's so many scholars that I love listening to. I've never met them in my whole life. They live all over the world, but I've seen them on YouTube, and I've seen them give talks on YouTube. So you can use them for good, and you can use it for bad. All right, a lot of good suggestions here. I won't be able to read all of them, but another really good one that somebody put is talking to people online, right? You can interact with people online in a good way, but you can also do cyberbullying, which is a really big problem if you're on the giving end or the receiving end. People that try to intimidate people, put people down because of, by intimidating them online or saying mean things to them or posting pictures about them, right? That's obviously really bad, right? It's not something we should be doing. So these are all really good examples that you guys said of using technology in a good way versus using technology in a bad way. Let's talk a little bit about the dangers of technology. One of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his name was Hudhayfa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He used to say, he said once, "Kuntu as'alu an ash-sharri." I used to ask the Prophet sallallahu about things that are bad, things that we should avoid. Like, what are the dangers of different things, so that I can protect myself from them, so that I know that these are bad things that I should avoid. and this is the reason that we're talking about this slide, the dangers of technology, is because we should know what are the pitfalls, where are the areas that you can fail, and what are the traps that Shaitan is trying to set so that you fail when you're using these different forms of technology. So let's talk about tablets, computers, internet. Let's kind of bundle all these things up together. There's a lot of things that you have to be careful about when it comes to using your computer or using a tablet, especially when you're connected to the internet. There's a lot of dangers in the things that you can see. There's a lot of dangers in the things that you can hear, and there's a lot of dangers in the types of interactions that you can have online. And you should know them. Like this is the reason we're having this, is so you can educate yourself and prepare yourself. We don't want you to discover these things later on and not be prepared. We want you to know that these are problems that people have when they interact on the internet using a tablet or a computer or a phone, and you should be careful about them. You should make sure you avoid these things. That's why we're telling you this. So in terms of seeing things that are dangerous, there's obviously bad pictures, bad videos, things that are inappropriate in the way that people dress, in the way that people like videos. There's a lot of bad stuff that you can see on the internet, and you have to be careful to protect your eyes. And because what you see, if you see something bad, it could enter your heart, and that's something that's going to hurt your iman. It's going to hurt your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there are things that's going to be a sin for you, right? If you look at something bad, that's a sin, right? You're not allowed to look at things that are bad or inappropriate. So there's a lot of bad things that you can see on the internet, and not just stuff that's inappropriate. Sometimes there's things that people think are okay, like because they're funny, so that means they're okay. And that's not 100% true. Sometimes there's a lot of pictures, like memes or videos, where somebody is getting hurt or somebody is saying something bad, and it looks like it's funny or it sounds like it's funny, so you don't think it's a bad thing, but it's actually a sin. You're not supposed to look at things, even if they don't have something inappropriate in them or something violent in them. Even if they're saying something bad or they're doing something disrespectful, like people watch videos of pranks or something like that where somebody gets hurt or somebody gets hit in the face, like those aren't things that you should be engaging in. Those aren't things that are productive or beneficial, and they can fall into sin, especially if they're hurting people and things like that. There's things that you can hear. There's dangers in the things that you hear online, right? So for example, things like music, bad words, for example. Even sometimes when you're trying to find something good, like if I'm on YouTube and I'm trying to listen to a speech or something like that, sometimes they even have commercials that are bad. And sometimes they just have bad audio or bad language in them, and that's something I have to make sure I protect myself from. So there are dangerous things that you can see on the internet through your tablet or your computer or your phone, and there's dangerous things that you can hear. But there's also dangers in terms of interaction, right? Especially with social media, you can talk to people online, right? This is something that's a very kind of a recent phenomena, but it's something in terms of kids doing it. So, for example, like with Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, all these different, like Snapchat, these different types of social media, you're interacting with people. Before it was just like texting. That was the only thing people had. Now you're talking to people almost as if you're right in front of them, and it's something that has become so normal that you need to make sure that, first of all, in Islam, when it comes to, for example, interacting and talking to the opposite gender, that relationship is really only a professional relationship or an academic relationship, right? Think of it as like when you interact with people online, they don't use the same rules when they're interacting in real life. So for example, if I'm in school and if I have to ask somebody some help for some homework or something like that, or I have to ask somebody a question, and if I'm a guy and there's one of my classmates that's a girl, but if I have to ask her a question about my homework or something like that, and she's the only one who's there, or I have to work in a project and I have to ask her something or I have to tell her something, right? That's okay if I do that, right? But if I'm talking to her, but in school, I wouldn't be talking to her just idle talk, right? I wouldn't be just joking around for no reason, because Islam doesn't encourage the relationships with the opposite gender more than they need to be, right? If it's for school, if it's for work, it's a different story, but that's where the limit is, right? You're not going to talk and make jokes and hang out for no reason with the opposite gender. So a guy with a girl or a girl with a guy, right? You're not going to do that. Same thing with online, right? You don't interact with somebody in the opposite gender for no reason, which is unfortunately what a lot of people do when they're online. They're talking to somebody. It could be just a girl from school or a guy from school or from somebody somewhere else that you know. And in real life, you wouldn't talk to them like just out of a joke or for no reason. But online, for some reason, people do that. And that's a problem. You need to protect yourself. And I know you're smart enough that you're not going to start that. But sometimes people are going to try talking to you, and you need to make sure that you ignore that, or you inform them that I'm not interested in talking to you online in this manner or something like that. Like sometimes it's not even you who's going to start it. Somebody else will start it, and you need to make sure that you end it. Because then shaitan will tell you, you know what, they're just saying hi, you're just being friendly, it's not a big deal. And it is a big deal, actually, because it leads to things that aren't good. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He encourages us to stop it right from the beginning. Not wait until it's something that's a big deal, but right from the beginning. So try to remind yourself that the same rules that we have for talking to somebody in real life, well, those are the same rules that we have when we're talking to somebody online. Even though you can't see them, you're still talking to them. So you need to be careful. And the same rules in terms of respect, in terms of manners, they apply online just as they do in person, right? You don't yell at somebody when you're talking to them in face-to-face. Similarly, you don't yell when you're talking online. Like some people type in like all caps and things like that. So that's kind of a form of yelling online. Same with bad language. When you're talking to somebody face-to-face, you're not rude to them, right? But online, because you can't see them, they can't see you, you get more confidence or you get more bold sometimes, and you might talk like in a manner that's more rude, or somebody else might talk to you in a manner that's more rude. Well, you need to remind yourself those same manners and same ethics and same behavior that you have in person, you need to have that online. And the people you're not allowed to talk to in person, in real life, like strangers, even if they're adults, right? You don't talk to strangers, right? You have to be careful. Same with online, right? You don't go on just like random places and start talking to strangers online. That's really dangerous, right? So again, just because you're not seeing them face to face, it doesn't mean anything. If anything, you have to be more careful, because people can lie about who they are on the internet. But in real life, you can see the person, so you know that they are who they are at least. But you need to be really careful about the things that you see, the things that you hear, and the people that you interact with on your computer, tablet, internet, things like that. Let's talk about TV, video games, movies. Obviously, a really important topic as well, and this kind of dips into like some other aspects of like entertainment and the way we spend our time. But it's obviously a really important form of technology. It's probably the form of technology that you interact with the most and that you have the most questions about and that your parents are probably the most concerned about. So we need to make sure we address this properly. First and foremost, when it comes to TV, video games, and movies, you need to, before we talk about what's okay, what's not okay, you need to understand that you want to make sure you use your time in the most productive manner. One of the biggest problems that scholars point out about TV and video games and movies is, before we even talk about what you're looking at bad, or is what they're saying bad, is it good, before you even talk about those things, we'll just look at how much time you're spending on something that's not bringing you any benefit. So that's one of the most important things. One of the reasons that scholars say that it's not okay to watch excess amount of TV or video games or movies and things like that is because you might spend 2 or 3 hours will just be gone because you're just watching a movie or whatever. And it could be a movie that doesn't have any bad scenes, it doesn't say anything bad, there's not like a lot of violence in it or anything like that, so there's nothing that your parents would object to, but 3 hours of your life are just gone. And time is a very valuable asset for the believer. It's a very important resource that we take advantage of, because we're just days, and every day that disappears, a piece of us disappears. So we need to make sure that we're using our time, because we have one life to live, and this is our one life to earn Jannah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to earn His mercy, to earn Jannah. And when we're in our grave, we're going to think back, every human being, every single one is going to look back at their life, and they're going to wish that they spent more time worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was walking by a graveyard, and there was a grave, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked his companions, he said, who's in this grave? And the companions, they answered, it's so-and-so, it's this person who's in this grave. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, do you want me to tell you what this man is saying? This person, he's in the grave, and what this person is saying, he's already dead. He's in the grave, underground. And what he's saying, or what he believes, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, this man, raka'atani ahabbu ilayhi, that coming back to life and praying 2 rak'ah, just praying 2 rak'ah prayer is more beloved to this man who's in the grave than your entire world. Like, imagine if you could have everything you wanted in life, like every video game, whatever you like in life. Like, imagine if you could have everything you wanted and you had it right in front of you, like whatever you wanted. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that this man, he loves, like, if he could come back and just pray 2 rak'ah, he would be happier than you would be if you had everything you wanted in the entire world. So for us, like, when we go in our graves, all of this, like, when we waste our time watching TV or playing video games or watching movies, we're not going to be able to get that time back. So we want to make sure that we're, first of all, not wasting our time. And it's one thing to watch something for like 20 minutes if it's okay to watch and there's nothing bad in it. And it's another thing to spend 2 or 3 hours, 4 or 5 hours. And sometimes in a week, you don't even know. Sometimes you watch something for half an hour or 1 hour. But if you do it every day, it adds up. 3, 4 hours a week, 5 hours a week. So the average kid, according to some statistics, watches 20 hours of TV/movies in a week. That's a lot of time that you can be using for so many other things. So, like, we're different because we have a purpose in life. A lot of other people, they don't know their purpose in life. So they spend their life watching TV, playing video games, watching movies. That's not okay for us to do because we know that there's a hereafter. We know that we're going to be held accountable for every minute that we have in this life. We're going to be asked, how did we spend our time? What did we do with the time that we had in this dunya? Did we use it in the right way or not? So we need to make sure that we're not falling into the same trap as everybody else, that they're just wasting their time. We have a purpose in life. We have a mission. And we need to make sure that we're using our time to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even doing something, I mean, there's so many things that we can do in place of watching TV or playing video games or watching movies, like helping our parents with things, doing our homework, reading Quran, right? There's a lot of different things that we can do. So we need to make sure that we're not just fulfilling our desires, but we're actually doing something where we're using our time to benefit ourselves. So that's the first thing the scholars say. So make sure that you're not wasting your time to begin with. But then they say, okay, well, what's actually okay to watch and what's okay to play with? There's a couple really important rules that you have to make sure. And obviously your parents have the final say on this, but I'm just going to giving you some general guidelines because eventually you're going to be responsible for yourself. You're going to have to make decisions for yourself. So you should know this information so that you can make the right decisions. You have to filter things for yourself. Unfortunately, what happens is that there's a lot of TV shows and more bad TV shows than good TV shows, more bad video games than good video games, and more bad movies than good movies available for you to watch and play with. And that's a problem because that means you have to filter these things. You have to be careful, and you have to be very selective in what you watch and what you play. So what that means is that you have to know what's okay and what's not okay. So for example, for TV, video games, and movies, there's kind of three aspects that scholars touch upon that you want to make sure that you don't cross these boundaries, you don't cross these lines. The first one is language. A lot of TV shows, movies, and video games, they use bad words. They use swear words. They use words that are not okay to use. And a lot of times kids, they think it's okay to watch those things because you're not saying those things, but actually listening to them is a bad deed as well. You're not supposed to be listening to things that are bad, even if it's like like they just say it once or they just say it a few times. That's a big red flag that you should avoid that TV show. And unfortunately, even shows that are like they look like kid TV shows have really bad words in them, or they make, for example, sometimes they make bad jokes about religion, for example. I don't know where this was. I think it was a doctor's office or somewhere, but there was they put on a TV show that looked like it was a kid's show, but they were making really bad jokes about religion. They were making jokes about God, right? Those are not okay things for us to listen to or watch, right? So that's, for me, if I'm trying to see, okay, can I watch this TV show? Can I play this video game? Can I watch this movie? The first thing I always ask is there going to be bad language in there? Are they going to say bad words, or are they going to make like bad religious jokes or things like that? If any of those things exist, even if it's one, that's one too many for me. So for me, that's kind of a deal breaker. Immediately, I know I can't watch that show and I can't play that video game. Even that video game, because sometimes you can skip the scenes where they talk, but sometimes you can't. So if I know that they're going to say bad words, I'm not going to play that video game. And I have that same rule for myself, same with my younger brothers, same with everybody, because that's something we, as Muslims, we can't participate in. The next thing is when people are wearing inappropriate clothing. So there's TV shows, for example, where women aren't fully dressed the right way, or men aren't fully dressed the right way. So for me, that's another deal breaker. So if there's a TV show where they have scenes like that, where they have a scene where a guy and girl will interact with each other, or people are dressed inappropriately, that's an immediate deal breaker. That means I can't watch that show. And this is especially scary for video games. I didn't know this, but even in video games, people dress really inappropriately in video games. And as soon as I see that, I know that we can't play that video game. And I remember a few years ago, I got a video game that I got from my younger brother, and I think it was like a Batman video game or something like that. And I would have never imagined that they would have people that are dressed inappropriately in that video game. And I checked already; they didn't have any bad language in the video game. It didn't have too much violence or anything like that. So I said, okay, it would be good if it'd be good for my little brother to have it. He'll like it, whatever. So I got it for him. We started playing, and I'm watching him play. And after like the second or third day that he was playing, there's a character that comes in the video game, and she's not wearing appropriate clothing. So even in video games, you have to be careful. So then we closed that video game, we got rid of it, we sold it, whatever. But that's like even in video games, you have to be careful. So the first one was language. The second one was the way that people dress or guy and girl relations. You have to make sure that you're not watching shows or video games or movies that have that kind of interaction in there, because that's opening the gateways to sin, and you don't want to open those floodgates. And the third one is excess violence, and that's something that your parents can kind of gauge more than anything else. is how much violence is okay for you, how much is not. But the first two are kind of like the most important. You have to have zero tolerance for that. You can't say, okay, a little bit of inappropriate clothing is okay, or a little bit of bad language is okay. That's zero tolerance. When it comes to violence, that's something that your parents have to set the guidelines for, because one parent might think that this is too much violence, and the other one might say, no, it's okay, it's not too much violence. And every child is different. Every child has a different level of tolerance, and every child, like some kids, they can watch things with violence in them, and it doesn't affect them. And other kids, they can't watch violence because it gives them nightmares and things like that. So that's something more you and your parents have to work out. But for the other two, you have to have zero tolerance when it comes to bad language, and it comes to guys and girls, inappropriate clothing or inappropriate interaction. So this is something you have to know, because your parents are not going to be able to see everything that you're watching all the time. And a lot of times, your parents might see 1 minute of a show, and it might look okay to them, but you're the only one who knows that this is not a good show to watch, and they use bad language, or they have bad things that happen in the show. You're the only one who knows that. And your parents, they might leave you alone. You're watching it. I mean, I see kids all the time. They're watching Netflix on their tablet or whatever, and obviously their parents not around them, and they don't know that their kid is watching something really bad. That's because parents don't know. So you have to make sure that you inform them and you tell them this is not an okay show to watch for me or my little brother or my little sister. And I know it's difficult to do that, because a lot of people at school might be talking about a certain TV show, and you wish you can watch that TV show. But don't worry, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said that if you stay away from something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's going to give you something even better than that. So maybe you're not watching a TV show. Like, there was a TV show that I wanted to watch that people are talking about, and when I looked it up online, like, there's websites where you can look whether it has bad language or inappropriate scenes and things like that. So I looked up the show online, and it had like a lot of bad scenes in it, and it had bad language in it. So I know I didn't want to watch that show. But as soon as I said that to myself, I remembered that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He gives me Jannah, then I can watch that show in Jannah, without the bad scenes. I can be in that show. Like, if it's a show about a superhero, you can be the superhero in Jannah, right? So you can, like, there's stuff that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you a much better reward, because you're staying away from something. And when you're in Jannah and you get to actually be Batman, for example, you get to ride in the Batmobile yourself, you're going to know that that's 1,000,000 times better than watching like a Batman show on TV or something like that, or playing that Batman video game. So know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you something better than what you're asking for, or what you're staying away from. And that's really powerful. You have to remember that. So it might feel bad and difficult, but you have to remember you're going to get something much better than that. And for the parents that are listening to this, there's a website. It's called IMDb, Internet Movie Database. And whenever I want to know if it's okay to watch like a movie, especially a movie, it's more for movies. There's when you type in a movie, there's a link that says Parents Guide. And I always click on that Parents Guide, and it tells me whether, most of the time it tells you 9 out of 10 times, whether it has some bad language in it or has bad scenes in it. Because you know what the problem is with movies is that they'll write things like PG-13 or rated R and things like that. But PG-13 doesn't mean that if you're 13 it's okay to watch, right? Some PG-13 movies that are inappropriate that even I can't watch, right? And I'm much older than 13, because it has bad language or has bad scenes between guys and girls. So I need to make sure that I know I'm preparing myself, because when you're watching a movie, a bad scene can come, you don't even know about it, right? Then you already saw it. It's already too late, right? You can't avoid it then. You've already seen it. So you have to make sure that you look up beforehand whether this movie is okay to watch or not. Even if it says like PG-13, or even if it's like just PG, sometimes there's still bad movies like that as well. So you need to make sure that you look at these things like parents' guides that people publish. And then there's even websites where you can watch movies and they take out all the bad scenes as well. So there's a lot of tools available. You have to look for them, and you have to be prepared, because Hollywood, the way they make movies is they like to make movies that have bad scenes in them, bad language, because they know more people are going to watch it like that. But we need to make sure that we don't watch those types of movies. So we're protecting ourselves, but we're also sending a message to these people that are making movies that we're not watching these movies that have bad scenes in them and things like that. And maybe they'll take a hint from that, and they'll say, well, maybe we should make movies that don't have all these bad scenes in them and bad language, because people aren't watching them anymore. So if enough people participate in that, they'll stop making movies like that. So we need to make sure that we do our part for that as well. And so it's so normal that people watch bad shows or play bad video games that you have to be strong, and you have to know that you're going to get really good deeds, and you're going to get something much better in Jannah for avoiding this bad thing. And this is important because your nafs, your desires that you have inside of you, they learn, they grow. If you feed them bad things, your nafs is going to learn to like bad things. And if you feed it good things, it's going to learn to like good things. And what I mean by feed is the way you spend your time. So I have this thing inside of me. Every human being has it. It's called your nafs, and these are essentially your desires. Like how come it's easy for me to watch TV for 2 hours, or play video games for 2 hours, or play basketball for 2 hours, but it's difficult for me to help my mom even for 20 minutes. Why is that? That's because my nafs, my desires inside of me, they like video games, they like TV, they like playing basketball. They don't like doing the dishes. They don't like doing homework. Well, why is that? How come there's somebody else? I have a friend, and he doesn't like watching TV. He doesn't like playing video games. He doesn't like wasting his time watching movies. He likes doing the dishes. He likes getting good deeds. He likes reading Quran. He likes praying. He likes doing his homework. How come he likes those things and I don't like those things? Is something wrong with me? Well, nothing's wrong with me. It's just that I've taught my nafs to like the bad things and not like the good things. How did I teach my nafs that? The nafs that's inside of me, my desires, it doesn't speak English, right? The way it understands things is how I spend my time. So if I spend my time watching TV, watching movies, playing video games, not helping my mom, not doing things that I'm supposed to be doing, then my nafs, it's going to understand, oh, you like these things. You like watching TV. You like playing video games. You don't like reading Quran. You don't like praying because you don't spend any time doing that. You spend most of your time doing all these other useless things. But if you spend your time doing chores, if you spend doing homework, learning things, being productive, if you spend your time doing that, then your nafs is naturally, it's going to like those things. After enough time, you give it 30 days or 40 days of doing those things, your nafs, your desires, are going to like doing those things. So you have to make sure that you teach your nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that inna nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su', that your nafs wants to fulfill its desires. Your nafs is like a little kid. A lot of you are little kids, but inside of you is another little kid. And this little kid just wants to have fun. He doesn't want to think about consequences. He doesn't want to be productive. He doesn't want to be good. He just wants to do what he wants to do or what she wants to do. You need to teach this nafs that's inside of you and say, no, we don't like TV. We don't like wasting our time playing video games. We don't like those things. And you teach it by doing the things that are good. So when you do the things that are good, your nafs is going to understand those things. When it comes to social media and texting and WhatsApp and things like that, I already touched upon that about act as if it's real life, right? The scholars, they say if you're talking to somebody, if I'm a guy and I'm talking to a girl online, then it's the same as being alone in a room. Even though it's a virtual room, it's not a real room, the same rule applies. And we're not allowed to be in a room alone, so I need to make sure that I don't do those types of things even if somebody else starts the conversation. We'll end in just a few minutes and then we'll take some questions because I know it's time for Maghrib in a lot of places, including where I am. So just a heads up that we are going to be ending pretty soon. So that covers TV, video games, movies, social media. I will take questions about that just as soon as we end, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions around that. I already see some questions like Lego games, are they okay, scary movies, things like that. So I'll definitely take those questions, inshallah, towards the end. Let me just go over the do's and don'ts of technology, and then we can end over there. Some of the do's that I wrote of technology here, I tried to write things that weren't really obvious, things that I think you should know about. There's obviously things that we already talked about that you should know. One of them is I always try to ask myself, before I do something, whether it's TV or video games or movies or anything with technology, online or whatever, I always say Bismillah. And the reason I do this is because, first of all, the Prophet ﷺ used to say Bismillah before he did things, so it's good to say that. But also it reminds me that, is what I'm doing okay? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to be okay with me doing this? Because if you can say Bismillah and then you can do it, then that's that's good, right? Because you're doing something good. But you don't say Bismillah and then do something bad, right? Like you don't say Bismillah and then be mean to your parents, right? You don't do that. That doesn't make sense, right? So I always try to say Bismillah before I do something because it reminds me, is it okay for me to do this? So if I'm typing an email to somebody or if I'm responding to somebody online or somebody messaged me, I always say Bismillah first and I always try to make a good intention because that reminds me to ask myself, is it okay what I'm doing? So if I say Bismillah and if a girl messages me and I say Bismillah, I'm not gonna message her back, right? I'm not gonna say hello back or something like that. I'm gonna say sorry, I can't talk to you, and then just end it, or I'm just gonna ignore it altogether, right? Which is sometimes better. So I need to make sure that saying Bismillah helps me remind me of my intention. Watch your time. You don't know how much time you waste with these online things and video games and TV and things like that. So be careful of your time. Be really careful about your time. Remember that your deeds are recorded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ, that you don't say anything except that somebody is writing those deeds down. And this means also the things that you type. A lot of times, sometimes we're always told to be careful with our tongues. Make sure you know what you're saying. Don't say things that you want to take that are going to hurt other people's feelings, for example, or they're going to be a sin for you. Same thing when you type. When you type something, you're typing a message or you're texting something, that's going to be recorded. Those deeds are going to be recorded and presented to you on the Day of Judgment, just like you said something. So you want to make sure that if you're typing something, you're not typing something to somebody that you're not supposed to be talking to. You're not typing something that's mean and is hurting somebody's feelings. That's the same as saying it to somebody. So don't type things that are bad. And with the amount of technology that we have today, sometimes you have to talk to people that are located really far away. So you sometimes there might be days where you type more than you even talk that whole day. So you have to remember that every letter that you type is like every sound that you utter. Both of them are recorded. So be really careful about what you write. Listen to your parents and inform your parents. That's numbers 4 and 5. This is important because obviously your parents are always looking out for you, right? They would rather overprotect you than underprotect you. This is an important lesson. Sometimes you might feel like, oh, like these other kids, they get to do that, but my parents aren't letting me do that. Because they want to make sure that you don't ruin your life and you don't ruin your iman over something that's going to be a waste of time or something that's going to be harmful for you or other people. So the best thing you can do in that situation is to, of course, listen to your parents. But you also have to inform your parents. And what I mean by that is that there's, for example, video games or TV shows that your parents think are okay, but you know that they're not okay. And your parents, there's no way that they can keep up with everything that's coming out in terms of video games, TVs, and movies and things like that, right? You already keep up with them because you're young and you talk about them, you hear about these things. So you need to tell your parents that, you know what, this is not okay. Your parents might think it's okay, but it's not okay. So you need to be smart and you need to inform your parents for yourself and for your younger siblings. So be really objective and be smart and be responsible. And again, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. So make sure you inform your parents about things that are okay, things that are not okay as well. Make a good intention and tie that with your dua. A lot of times when I talk to young people your age, they talk about how they make dua, they want like a new computer, they want a new tablet, they want this, they want that, they want all these different things. Well, a really good thing you can do when you make dua for those things is to make dua for them with a good intention. So instead of just saying, oh Allah, please give me a tablet, or oh Allah, please give me a new computer, tie that with a good intention. Oh Allah, please give me a new tablet so that I can use it to read Quran, I can use it to read books, I can use it to learn this, learn that. Tie it with a good intention when you make dua, so that you're using it for a good thing. I visited, I was at somebody's house pretty recently, a couple weeks ago, and I saw that their kids were taking Quran classes online using Skype. So because they weren't able to get a Quran teacher where they live, so they found a Quran teacher using Skype, and that's a really good way to use technology. So they have this tablet, and they literally only use it to read Quran and to talk to their Quran teacher on Skype, because that's why they wanted the tablet. And they can use it for other things if they want to. Their parents let them use it, but this is why they wanted it. So they made a good intention, and they have this, and they can use it for other things too, but this is the reason they wanted it. So tie your good intention with your dua. And always ask somebody if you're not sure. Ask the imam, ask a scholar if you're not sure. There's a lot of new technology that's coming out with smartwatches, virtual reality. These are things that your parents maybe have not even heard about. But you know that these things are coming out. With video games now, virtual reality is becoming a big thing where you put this headset on and you're immersed in this world. Instead of just watching it on TV, you can actually see it in these glasses that you're wearing, these goggles. It's all around you. So that's going to be a really big thing. It's already starting to boom, and it's going to be a big thing. Same with smartwatches. There's so much, like sometimes parents think it's just a watch and you can't really do anything, but the same things that you can do with a phone or a tablet, even a computer sometimes, you can do on a smartwatch. So there's a lot of things that your parents might not know about, but you know about those things, so make sure when you ask for them and when you participate, you use them, make sure you have a good intention. These don'ts are pretty obvious, but I'll just mention a couple of them because we're all running out of time. I put the most important one first. Don't use the gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you to disobey Him. This is a really big problem. People ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a tablet, for a computer, for these different gadgets, but then they use them to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know it's time to pray Asr, they know it's time to pray, and instead they're watching something on YouTube or they're online and they miss their prayer, for example. Or they use it to become farther away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They use it to disrespect their parents. Their parents say, okay, now you have to put it away. And then they get upset at their parents. They yell at their parents, which is a major sin, right? You're not allowed to do that. So you need to make sure that you don't use this gift. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did He give you that? Did He give it to you so that you become a bad Muslim, you become a worse person? That's not why He gave it to you, right? He gave it to you for a good reason. So you need to make sure that you use it for a good reason so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you even more and you're grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for using that. So make sure that's kind of the most important thing that I wanted to express. And the other one is don't try to have everything that your friends have. So this is another common thing I see among young people is that they try to, they see their friends have something and then they use that to say, to tell their parents, I want that thing too because they can have it. look, everybody's going to get different things in life, right? It's never going to be that this person has this, so I should have this as well, right? That's not realistic. Your parents know why they're giving you things, why they're not giving you things. Of course, you're open to discuss things with them, but don't use that to disrespect them. Don't say that this person has this and I don't have this, and I do these good things and this person does these good things, right? We don't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses everybody differently, and we need to make sure that we're at least grateful for what we already have, and that we're having respectful discussions and dialogues with our parents. The last slide has to do a little bit with technology. What I wanted to share with you is that we have a really proud Muslim heritage in which Muslims they weren't scared of technology. They always used technology to be the best Muslims and to make the best, to discover the best things for mankind. That's what Muslims were historically. There was a period for about 800 years or so, which was considered kind of the golden age of Islam, the Renaissance, in medieval Islam, like hundreds of years ago, where Muslims were at the forefront of discovering everything in math, science, geography, geology, education, astronomy, space, architecture, and even more. So the reason I'm mentioning this is to inspire you to know that we're not saying technology is all bad and you should just be careful, but we're saying use technology in a way to discover things that are going to help the entire world. They're going to increase your iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing He revealed was Iqra, read, educate yourself, become educated. So all these things with technology, we do want to explore them, but we want to explore them in a way that makes sense, not just sitting at home watching TV and wasting our time, but in a way that helps mankind. And Muslims are still doing that to this day. So there's a lot of Muslim scholars that I want to talk about that discovered things in algebra and geography and geology. But because we don't have time, I'll just mention a couple of them maybe, so that you know that Muslims, we should be proud that Muslims are the ones that discovered all these great things that people are still using today. We were the ones who invented them. And sometimes people try to put down Muslims in the news and things like that Muslims are bad and Muslims are this. Muslims are the best people that ever existed. And they discovered the best things that were ever discovered in the history of mankind. And we believe in the only religion that's the right religion, the best religion. So we have a lot of things that we should be proud of. There was a Muslim scholar of the past whose name was Ibn al-Haytham, who discovered a lot of discoveries with glasses, optics. He discovered a very important discovery, which was how we invented cameras. So, Muslims were responsible for that. There was another scholar's name was Az-Zahrawi, who was the father of modern surgery. Even the way that we perform surgery today is because of what he discovered hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And this is because Muslims were exploring technology. They were using it to make everybody's lives better. They weren't using it just for entertainment and just to use their time in kind of a silly manner. So, I know it's already 7:59, at least in Central Time. But I will use this opportunity to take some questions. So feel free to ask them. There's a bunch that have already been asked. So I'm going to try to get to the ones that are kind of the most common, that have been repeated a few times, so that a lot of people are getting benefit. People asked about scary movies, a couple questions about that. Same rules apply for any type of movie, right? First, I always look for language, and then I look for inappropriate scenes. The problem with scary movies is sometimes they have a lot of bad scenes and they have a lot of bad language. So those are two things you want to be careful of. If they don't have any of those things, then you just have to go with what your parents say. Sometimes scary movies are just too scary for kids, and sometimes they're not too scary for kids. But really, the two important things are the language and the inappropriate scenes between guys and girls and things like that. If those two things aren't in the movies, then it's kind of up to your parents whether they allow you to watch things that are too scary or not too scary. But the first two things are kind of more important. I'm getting questions about Lego video games and Minecraft. Same principles apply as I said before about video games. Is that number one, you want to make sure you're not wasting your time, right? It's okay to use some video games or to use TV if it doesn't have any bad scenes in it or anything like that, to take a break and things like that, right? People do that when they play sports, for example, which is a healthier way to use your time. But that's okay too. If you want to use it to play something or watch something, it doesn't have any bad scenes in it, and it's not bad for you or anything, that's okay. It's permissible. There's nothing impermissible about it. It's not haram or anything like that. But once you use it to the point where you're wasting your time and you're missing your prayers or you're becoming a worse person, then it's not okay for you. So same with Minecraft. I've never played Minecraft, but from what I've seen and what I've seen people play it, there's nothing inherently bad in it, right? You can use it for good, you can use it for bad, you can use it to waste your time, but you can also use it to learn things. Like I know kids that use Minecraft in school. They use it in class to learn programming, to learn video games, to learn different skills from that video game. So it depends on how you use it. If you use it in a way that's okay, then it's okay. If you don't use it in a way that's okay, like you're just wasting your time all day, then that's obviously a problem. You shouldn't be doing that. Some people asked about violent games, like shooting games, violent games, zombie games. A few questions about that. Um, Violence is kind of it's a hard one to say yes or no on because violence is pretty subjective. There's some parts of violence that are very clear that they're violent, right? Like shooting games and zombies and things like that. But that's something that your parents have to kind of establish where that line is because like even innocent looking games, right? There's some violence in that. That might be too violent for some kids, and some games that look like they have a lot of violence in it might not be too violent for kids. That's kind of it's I don't have enough knowledge to draw a hard line between when something is too violent for you or when it's not, or from the Islamic perspective. So that's something that I think your parents have to judge for more. So the two things I look for are inappropriate scenes, like guy-girl stuff, or inappropriate clothing or language. And then violence, I kind of base it on what I think is appropriate for if I'm thinking about my younger brother, for example. I know how much violence he can handle, and he knows how much he can handle as well. So that amount of violence might be too much for some of you. It might not be too much for some of you. It all depends on where you are and things like that. So I can't say like games with zombies are all okay or they're all bad. It really depends on who you are. Same with shooting games. Some shooting games are okay for my little brother. Some of them are not okay for my little brother. So it just kind of depends on where you are, how much you how mature you are, or how susceptible you are based on the violence that's in the game and things like that. So that's something your parents have to decide for you, or you have to understand where you stand on that.
Brother Faizan?
Yep.
Just a couple of questions. Maybe you've seen them already, but one of them, and I think you've already given guidelines, but a couple are watching sports highlights and a movie in a classroom, and
Sure.
then if you go on a website and you see something by mistake. Sure.
So let me answer all three of these. Let me start with the sports highlights. I don't watch any sports myself, so for me sports is always a waste of time, but I know there's a lot of people that like watching sports and things like that. The same principles apply. If there's no bad scenes in it, there's no bad language, then you have to just make sure that you're not wasting your time completely. If you're watching it because you're interested in it, there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But if you're watching for hours on end, or you're wasting your time, you're not taking care of your other responsibilities, then that's not okay for you. But inherently, it's okay to watch. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with it or anything like that with sports. Movies in school. So I know sometimes in school they'll show movies and they usually don't have bad language, but sometimes they have like a bad scene in them between a guy and a girl. I've been in classrooms like that myself when I was a kid, or I was in middle school, high school, even in college. What I do is I either just close my eyes or I look away when there's a bad scene, and usually you can tell when a bad scene is coming, a lot of times in school movies at least, because they don't just come out of nowhere. And usually there's only one bad scene, usually, because if it has too many, they wouldn't show it in school. But sometimes the school doesn't have the same rules that we have for ourselves, so you need to close your eyes or need to look away for a second. That's probably the best thing you can do in that situation. And what was the last one? Website. So yeah, sometimes you do go on a website or they have like an ad or something like that that has like a bad picture in it or bad words. Even I was on a airplane 6 or 7 months ago, and they had advertisement on the back of the seats, and that advertisement of the seat that was right in front of me had an inappropriate picture on it. And I was really surprised because the airplane and like everybody's there and stuff like that. It's not like a restaurant or something like that. So I thought it was kind of strange. So I covered it up so that I wouldn't look at it, my family wouldn't look at it. I took a piece of paper and I kind of like just taped it on top of it so that we wouldn't look at it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look at something inappropriate as an accident and you look away right after you've seen it, so if I look at something and I accidentally look at something bad and I turn away from it right away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He forgives you for that first look. So that's again, if it's an accident and you look at it and you turn away right away as soon as you know you're looking at something bad, you're not going to get a sin for that. So you just have to look away right away, or close that website, or if it's like an advertised, there's like if you're using like Firefox or Google Chrome, there's these add-ons you can add, like AdBlock Plus and things like that, and they hide all the ads, so you won't see any inappropriate ads as well. So yeah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, this is such a super hot topic that the questions can go on forever. So we might have to call you back, inshallah, sooner than later. And then because there's another question of how does this kind of tech affect the brain. So we might even have to, maybe you could be a research person, or we could call another person who has really good research with how this really affects the brain too. But yeah, lots of good questions, and I know that our time is up, but of course the kids want a lot more, so we'll have to, inshallah, arrange another day with you, inshallah, and have a similar topic, maybe an extension of this part 2 or something. So inshallah we can discuss that. So Jazakallah khair. Brother Faizan, can you end with dua, and I'll make the final announcements then.
Sure. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آمنا فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا ولم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Oh Allah, we ask you through all your beautiful names and attributes to protect us, to guide us, to make us from the best believers that ever existed. Oh Allah, make us the best that we can be. Enter us and our families into your paradise, into Jannah, the highest of paradise, Al-Firdaus Al-A'la. Make us the companions of the prophets in Jannah. Allow us, protect us from the hellfire. Save us from even a moment of the agonizing fire. Oh Allah, allow us to implement everything that we've learned today to benefit our iman, to benefit our deen and our dunya and our akhirah. Oh Allah, protect us. Allow us to understand technology as we interact with it. Allow us to make the right decisions when it comes to technology. Allow us to use technology as a tool to increase our iman and to benefit society, our community, and to benefit our own lives. Oh Allah, protect us from the dangers of technology and phones, tablets, computers, internet, TV, video games, social media sites, and allow us to use every form of technology to become closer to you. Oh Allah, don't let technology be a test for us, and don't let it become a way of disrespecting our parents or wasting our time. Allow us to use every gift that we have to obey you and to become closer to you. Increase us in taqwa, protect our nafs, purify our nafs, so that it only likes things that are in obedience and in your pleasure. Oh Allah, we ask you through all your beautiful names and attributes to give us shade on the day of judgment, and unite everybody who participated in this or wanted to participate in this under your shade on the day of judgment, under your throne, on a day where there is no shade except for your shade, and unite us in paradise and allow us to experience the happiness of seeing you in Jannah. Wa akhiru da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Faizan. What an awesome topic, and the way you executed it and the way you helped us understand. Really good reminders, really good guidelines that we all can. I know lots of audience are asking specific, like, can we watch Minions, can we watch this? But then Brother Faizan gave you the guidelines that it should not have these things, and inshallah now you and your parents have to discuss this together and decide what is, inshallah, good for you. And I know lots of questions about music in the games and musical games, so inshallah we'll have to come back to this topic again and similar topic. And Jazakallah khair. So inshallah next month we're going to come back with another topic, another speaker, and inshallah understand and walk on the path that pleases Allah and reaches, inshallah, the success of this world and the hereafter. So inshallah, so far it is going to be May 11th, a Wednesday, but it's not confirmed yet. So inshallah you can mark it in your calendars, but we'll send out emails and flyers as reminders, May 11th, which is a Wednesday. Inshallah. So Jazakallah khair, Brother Faizan, again. May Allah give you success in both worlds and inshallah reunite us in Jannah for eternity. Jazakallah khair. I'll be closing the room. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.